Well, the man whose task is to steer his party's Brexit position is, of course, Keir Starmer, who joined me a little earlier. I asked him what he made of that vote.
I was disappointed, but we had to make a decision, and we made a decision. I suppose what I'm most concerned about is that this detracts somewhat from the progress we've made, because this time last year, my conference speech said nobody's ruling out the option of Remain. Now we've made a very firm commitment that there'll be a referendum, that Remain will be an option alongside a credible leave option, and that will happen within 6 months of a Labour government. So we have made progress, but I was disappointed by the outcome.
That exact moment, though, because it sounded as if the chair thought Remain had won, and then Jenny Formby contradicted her and then wouldn't allow the card vote, which would have allowed us anonymously to actually know the numbers.
Yeah, I'd actually left by then, and so I didn't live through that bit of it, and therefore I didn't see what was going on.
But you know that a card vote wasn't allowed.
I know there wasn't a card vote, and there's obviously some discussion about that. But as it happens, I had left and wasn't any part of any of that.
You want to win a general election, call a referendum, renegotiate a new deal, put it back to the people, and you would campaign vigorously for Remain.
Yeah.
Now, what happens if we're already out on a Tory deal by the time that general election comes around? Is it no referendum then?
Well, this presupposes that we're still in the EU.
But that's what I'm asking.
Yeah,
let's say the election is November and
yeah.
we have left on a Tory deal at the end of October. Then what? Is there still a referendum?
Well, assuming for the moment we're still in, the idea, and it is an important idea, is that Remain goes up against a version of leave that we can actually leave with. Because I think it's very important for people who want to remain that they have Remain on the ballot paper. We've been arguing that for a very, very long time. But it's equally important for people who want leave that the option to leave is one that you can actually leave on.
We understand that, but there is every chance that we may have left by the time that general election comes. If we have left, where does that position leave
I'm not sure that's right, because we've passed legislation that prevents us crashing out of the EU at the end of October. I personally think it's pretty unlikely that we're leaving. That by the end of October, we will have a deal through and be leaving on that basis, because at the moment, there aren't any proposals on the table for the EU. And to get from where we are now to a signed-off deal with the EU through our Parliament, through the EU Parliament, and implemented by the end of October, I just think is far too tight to be credible.
So when Boris Johnson says we absolutely will have left by the end of October, you don't believe that?
I don't believe it, and I think it's reckless. I mean, just let me play that out, because it's a strong thing to say. One, we shouldn't be leaving with no deal, because I do think that would be catastrophic for manufacturing, etc. But even if he's going down the road of a deal, let's just test this. And let's say with a week to go, he is making progress with the EU, and they're saying, you know, over the next 4 or 5 weeks, we could probably progress this to a workable deal. Is he really going to say, oh, well, I said I'd go on the 31st of October, so I can't wait till November when we get a deal, I'll just crash us out anyway? I mean, it's so unthinking. I mean, 2 days to go, the EU says, this is progress. And
so
Boris Johnson says this is progress. And then he says, but since I said do or die, we'd better die.
So this only works then, your position on Brexit only works if there is a general election, let's say in November, and we haven't left.
Yeah, the whole thinking behind a referendum is that it's got to happen before we leave.
OK, so John McDonnell this morning called this a logical sequence, I think were his words. So when Unison and others tells you that the country is crying out for a Labour government and an unequivocally Remain position on Brexit, are they helpful or unhelpful?
Well, the party and the unions have taken different views on this. I agree with Unison on this, and that's why I have said what I had about campaigning for Remain. But it is important for me to respect both sides in this. I have faithfully tried to do that over 3 years. But do I think we should campaign for Remain? Yes, I do.
Yeah, and Labour grandee Alan Johnson said last week your party on this position will get slaughtered. His words, you have to have a very large foot in the door to keep people on the doorstep long enough to explain it. Have you tried out this policy on the doorstep?
I have tried out, not this policy, but I've been arguing Brexit on the doorsteps for the last 3 years.
But this policy now, this policy
Well, this
now.
policy is hours old, and therefore, of course not.
Well, it's not really, in the sense that, you know, we know that it has been trying to find a way of fighting to win an election without a clear backing of leaving or remaining. Have you tried that out?
Until today, what we've not been able to try out on the doorstep is the Labour Party saying, you definitely get a referendum.
Right, let's try it out now. So the Tories say, we're out. The Lib Dems say, we're staying. Labour says...
If you vote for Labour, the public will decide in a referendum. Now, I would say this, wouldn't I? But there is an element of the Tories saying, we'll leave without a deal, we won't ask you about it. The Lib Dems saying, we'll revoke and we won't ask the public about it. And the Labour Party saying, actually, if we're going to get out of this, we need to ask the public their view so that we can have a way forward. Actually, you know, notwithstanding the differences of opinion today, I genuinely think that for a party to say, in order to get through this, we will let you, the public, decide, which nobody else is saying, is a powerful message.
Let's talk about other stuff at the conference here. The ideology for this week is people before privilege. What is privilege?
Well, privilege is a small percentage having huge wealth. Privilege is massive disparities in income. Privilege is the disparity in life expectancy across the country, even in my constituency, between the richest areas and the most disadvantaged areas. There's a 10-year life expectancy difference, and in some parts of the country, life expectancy is going down in the 21st century Britain. So I think that I genuinely think that if you look at any measure of inequality over the last 10 years, it's now going off the scale. And I don't think people are comfortable with that, wherever they sit on the continuum.
So it's how you translate that. Are you happy to see your party asset grab from private schools, whether it's buildings, whether it's libraries, whether it's playing fields? Are you happy with that?
I think it's really important for us to set out how we're actually going to shift power and wealth in a fundamental way.
Asset grab from private schools. Are you happy with that,
Well,
Keir Starmer?
there are changes that are going to be made to private schools, but the important thing is that if you accept the proposition that inequality is too deep now, then we've got to do more radical things about it.
I'm asking where you accept it. Is it privilege to buy a house in a school catchment area? Is that something that is privilege that should go?
Well, in a sense, of course it is, but I don't think it should go. What I've argued for is not whether people can buy a house in this area or that. What I've argued for is to invest in our state schools in such a way that people don't feel they've got to move.
But we're trying to work out, aren't we?
In a sense, we're having the wrong conversation. In Camden, in my constituency, a huge amount of money has gone into primary schools, and they're very, very good. And actually, people who would otherwise send their children to private schools tend not to do so. This is across the country in a very real way.
Let me throw an old quote at you. If people pay their taxes at whatever rate you set them, could you be intensely relaxed about people getting rich? Or are those days gone?
I think that's a mistake. I think if we've learnt anything, we've learnt that this theory that money inevitably trickles down from those that are making a lot of money or corporations that are making a lot of money, it doesn't work.
So should
that was the
people
theory.
who are rich, let's say earning over £70,000, should they worry that a Labour government will strip them of their assets?
I don't think it's a question of stripping of assets.
We don't know, that's why
we have a tax system which taxes people at different levels according to their wealth, and that is how we should do it.
So when the journalist Kevin Schofield received a text from a Labour MP which said this evening, "We look like a chaotic, scruffy, angry, deluded, dangerous rabble. We hate success, hard work, intelligence and wealth. We like mediocrity, laziness, irresponsibility. We're chanting the name of our leader like a cult." Why would anyone vote Labour?
Well, in 2017, we faced the same issue of people saying that's the nature of the Labour Party. We produced a manifesto which gave hope to millions of people who then voted Labour, and we got 40% of the vote share. But taking it away from these who text who.
You
and
lost the election.
I
Keir.
appreciate that, but who texts who about what the Labour Party's like? What I know is that we've got ingrained inequality
But
in
when
this
you
country.
hear that, don't you worry that that is the party
Well,
that you
look,
are
I don't know
turning
who texts
into?
some journalist about something or other. What I do know...
The spirit of that, though, does that make you think that's the party you're turning
into? What I do
into?
know, and this is why I came into politics, is that there is ingrained, fractured inequality across this country, and something needs to be done about it. And we're not going to be able to do something about it unless we're clear that we need to go further than we've been going before.
Keir Starmer, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.